The mysterious signal. Deep in the vastness of space, the human fleet cruised through the unknown. Their mission was simple: explore new regions of the galaxy and search for anything that could be valuable for Earth. The stars were countless, and most of the time, space seemed quiet and empty. But today, something was different. Lieutenant Sarah Wells sat at the communications desk, her eyes glued to the screen in front of her. The quiet hum of the ship filled the room. The sound of a well-oiled machine that had traveled countless light years. But Sarah noticed something odd. A strange signal had appeared out of nowhere on the ship's radar. It wasn't just any signal. It was a distress call, weak but unmistakable, coming from deep in uncharted space. "Captain, you need to see this," Sarah said, calling the captain over. Captain Thomas Walker walked over quickly, sensing the urgency in Sarah's voice. He stood beside her, scanning the screen. The signal was faint, lost among the usual cosmic noise, but it was there. He'd seen enough distress signals in his time to know that this one wasn't just a random error. "Is it from a nearby ship?" Captain Walker asked, his voice steady, but his curiosity piqued. "No, sir," Sarah replied, shaking her head. "This is coming from the other side of the galaxy. It's too far to be one of ours. The coordinates show it's deep within the borders of a completely uncharted area." A chill ran down Captain Walker's spine. Space was full of mysteries, but this was no ordinary event. A distress signal from such a faraway place could mean danger, or it could be a trap. But the call was so faint, so weak, that it had to be taken seriously. "We'll investigate," Captain Walker decided, his voice firm. "Prepare the fleet for a new course. Set the coordinates to these coordinates immediately." The human fleet, a small but highly advanced collection of ships, had been traveling through the galaxy for months, exploring the unknown. They were skilled, well-equipped, and had survived many challenges. But this would be different. They were about to venture into an area where no human had ever been before. No one knew what was out there, but there was no turning back now. As the fleet changed direction, the feeling of unease spread among the crew. Some tried to ignore it, focusing on their tasks, but others couldn't help but feel nervous. The unknown was always dangerous. Over the next few hours, the ship's systems locked onto the signal, slowly growing stronger as they neared the source. The long silence of space was broken only by the hum of the ship's engines and the soft chatter of the crew. They continued their journey, every second bringing them closer to a mystery that none of them could have expected. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they arrived at the coordinates. The stars around them seemed distant, cold, and unwelcoming. The area was unlike any they had seen before. It was quiet, too quiet. No space debris, no other ships, just endless stretches of dark space, filled with the unknown. "It's hard to believe anyone is out here," Sarah muttered, still watching the radar. "There's no sign of any ships nearby." "Keep searching," Captain Walker replied. His eyes narrowed as he gazed at the cold blackness ahead. There had to be something here. They were too close to the source of the signal to be wrong. Then, without warning, a new reading popped up on the ship's scanners. A massive object appeared from the darkness. The radar blinked, confirming its size. It was enormous, bigger than anything the humans had ever seen before. The reading showed that it wasn't just an asteroid or debris. It was a fleet, or at least the remains of one. "Captain, look at this," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. This isn't right. There's something massive out here. It's like an entire fleet, and there's no sign of life." The object in front of them was an old, decaying fleet. Massive warships and cruisers, their once pristine hulls now covered in age and damage. The ships were frozen in space, abandoned long ago by their owners. But how did they end up here? And why were they sending out a distress signal? "What happened to them?" asked Lieutenant Wells, looking at the broken ships in disbelief. Captain Walker stared at the screen, his mind racing. A fleet of ships this large should have been well known. But these ships weren't listed in any of their records. The distress signal must have been sent out from these ships long ago. They were lost, or worse, dead. Yet something about this felt different. He couldn't explain it, but something was off. It wasn't just the size of the ships or their abandoned look. It was the fact that they had remained hidden in this sector for so long, unnoticed by any other spacefaring civilization. "Set a course to investigate further," Captain Walker ordered. "This doesn't add up. We need answers." As the human fleet carefully navigated around the decaying remnants of the mysterious fleet, everyone felt the weight of the unknown. What had happened to these ships? Why had they been left to rot in the dark corners of space? And most importantly, who had sent the distress signal? And what did it mean? The crew had no idea, but as they prepared to get closer, one thing was clear. They were about to uncover something far bigger than they had anticipated, something that could change everything. The journey into the unknown had just begun. First contact. As the human fleet approached the eerie remnants of the mysterious fleet, the atmosphere aboard the ships was thick with anticipation. Everyone on board knew something extraordinary awaited them. But the more they scanned the debris of the abandoned ships, the stranger it became. The ships' designs were unlike anything the humans had ever encountered before. Their massive size and unfamiliar shape made it clear that these were no ordinary vessels. Lieutenant Sarah Wells, still at her console, was the first to break the silence. "Captain, the readings are strange. There's no sign of any life forms, not even residual energy signatures. But the distress signal, it's still coming through, faint but persistent." Captain Walker, who had been standing in the center of the bridge, deep in thought, nodded. "That doesn't make sense. How could a fleet this size be abandoned and the signal still be active? It's like someone wants us to find them, but no one is left to explain it." He stood tall, glancing at his officers. Everyone had their eyes glued to their screens, watching as the human fleet circled the ghost ships. The atmosphere was tense, but the truth was, no one really knew what to expect. Even after years of space exploration, they had never encountered anything like this before. And yet, they were about to find something far beyond their expectations. "Prepare a boarding team," Captain Walker ordered. "We'll board one of these ships. Find out what happened here. If this distress signal is real, there must be something more." The crew moved quickly. The human fleet had been prepared for dangerous encounters, but nothing could have fully prepared them for what lay ahead. As the boarding team gathered their gear, Sarah felt an uncomfortable chill settle in her bones. Despite the lack of life signs, there was something in the air, an unshakable feeling that they weren't alone. Her instincts told her that someone, or something, was watching. The docking process was smooth, but the silence was deafening. The massive airlocks on the derelict ship opened slowly, and the crew stepped onto the cold, silent vessel. The atmosphere inside was eerily still, with no movement, no sounds, nothing. It was as if the ship had been abandoned in an instant. "This ship has been here for a long time," one of the boarding team members remarked. "Look at this corrosion. This thing's been floating here, forgotten." The team moved cautiously through the halls, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. The walls were covered in strange, foreign symbols. Some were familiar, but others were completely alien. The humans had no idea what any of this meant. Whoever these people were, they clearly weren't like anything they had encountered before. As the team moved deeper into the heart of the ship, they came across a central command room. The doors slid open, revealing an area filled with outdated technology, most of it long dead. But one console flickered to life as the crew approached, its screen blinking with a message. "It's still functioning," Sarah whispered, almost in disbelief. "This must be the heart of the ship." Captain Walker stepped forward, tapping a few buttons on the console. The screen buzzed to life, showing a series of images and data streams that were incomprehensible to the human eye. But there was one thing that stood out, a faint, garbled message. "Play it," Captain Walker commanded, his voice tense. The message began, its words distorted and fragmented. But one thing was clear. The Empire, they're coming. We failed. We're too weak. You need to escape. The crew stood in stunned silence, trying to comprehend the meaning of the message. Who was the Empire? And why were they so afraid? The words didn't make sense. Why had this message survived? Why was it reaching them now, so long after its creators had disappeared? Captain Walker's mind raced. We need to find out more. Someone, or something, left this here for us to find. But who? A sudden motion caught Sarah's eye. She turned quickly, her heart skipping a beat. In the shadows of the command room, a figure stood, just out of sight. The figure was humanoid, but its features were obscured by the darkness. It moved swiftly and silently, vanishing before anyone could react. Did anyone else see that? Sarah asked, her voice shaky. The rest of the team shook their heads, but the unease was undeniable. Something wasn't right. A cold sweat formed on the back of Sarah's neck as she glanced around. Whoever, or whatever, had been on this ship was still here. They were not alone. Keep your guard up, Captain Walker ordered. We don't know who or what we're dealing with yet. Secure the area and report back to the ship. We're leaving soon. But as the crew retraced their steps back toward the docking bay, the sense of dread only grew stronger. It felt as though the ship itself was alive, watching them, waiting. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. When they reached the airlock, one of the crew members froze. There's something in the air. Something. Strange. It's like a presence. I can't explain it. Get back to the fleet, now. Captain Walker barked. His calm was quickly fading into panic. There was something on this ship, something that should have been left behind. They had unknowingly awakened it. As the human crew quickly returned to their ship, their minds raced with questions. What was the Empire that the message spoke of? Who had sent the distress signal, and why? And most importantly, who, or what, was still on that ship with them? The human fleet quickly detached from the derelict vessel, retreating back into the safety of space. But the mysterious fleet wasn't just an abandoned relic. It was a warning. And the humans had just stepped into something much bigger than they could have ever imagined. The mystery was only beginning. The encounter. The silence aboard the human fleet was unbearable. As the crew settled back into the safety of their ships, there was an undeniable sense of unease. Captain Walker couldn't shake the feeling that they had just uncovered something much larger and more dangerous than they could handle. What had they discovered in that abandoned fleet? Who, or what, was the Empire that had been mentioned in the cryptic message? And most troubling of all, what was still out there, lurking in the dark corners of space? Report, Lieutenant Wells, Captain Walker asked, his voice calm, but his mind racing. Sarah stood by the communications console, her hands moving quickly over the keys. Sir, I'm picking up something new. A ship, a very large ship, appears to be heading toward us from the direction of the derelict fleet. It's not showing up on any of our usual scans. It's cloaked, completely invisible. A cold shiver ran down the captain's spine. They had thought they were safe, but this sudden revelation shattered that illusion. Cloaked? Walker repeated. Is it one of theirs? Could it be another part of that empire? Possibly, Sarah answered, her voice tense. The readings don't match anything in our records. This ship is much more advanced than anything we've seen before, and it's headed straight for us. The crew stared at each other, a mix of disbelief and fear in their eyes. The atmosphere on the ship changed in an instant. The calm exploration mission had turned into a battle for survival. We have no idea what we're dealing with, Captain Walker muttered, more to himself than anyone else. But we won't back down. The human fleet positioned itself defensively, but the mysterious ship continued to approach. It seemed to know exactly where they were, its movements deliberate and calculated. The human fleet's sensors could detect nothing about it except for its strange, almost unnatural speed. It was almost as if the ship had a mind of its own, aware of their every move. "Brace for impact," Captain Walker ordered. Just as the fleet prepared for whatever was coming, the cloaked ship emerged from the darkness. It was enormous, far bigger than anything the humans had ever seen. Its sleek alien design was completely different from the derelict fleet they had just explored. Its smooth black surface seemed to absorb the surrounding light, giving it a menacing, almost shadow-like presence. The human ships immediately opened communication channels, but no response came. The silence stretched on, broken only by the tense hum of the fleet's systems. The alien ship didn't move. It simply hovered just out of reach, as if waiting for something. Then, without warning, a booming voice echoed across the human ship's communication system. It was strange, guttural, and yet somehow authoritative. The words were barely understandable, distorted by static and incomprehensible sounds. "This is the Galactic Empire," the voice announced coldly. "Your presence in our space is unacceptable." The words hit the human crew like a punch to the gut. This was it, the empire they had been warned about, the power they had been too blind to fully understand until now. The voice continued, its tone dripping with disdain. "Leave immediately, or face the consequences." The crew exchanged uncertain glances. Captain Walker stood motionless, processing the weight of the situation. This was no mere warning. This was a threat. "They must know we're human," Sarah said, speaking softly but with certainty. "And they don't seem happy about it." Walker clenched his fists, staring at the massive, cloaked ship. "They may not know what they're dealing with, but we'll show them." The captain's words were a promise. He wasn't about to back down. Human resolve was something the galaxy had never truly understood, and he wasn't about to let the unknown intimidate him. "Prepare the fleet for battle," Walker ordered, his voice resolute. "We're not leaving. If the Empire wants a fight, they'll get one." The human ships quickly mobilized, but there was something unsettling about the way the Empire ship remained so still, so unyielding. It was as if they were studying the humans, waiting to see what they would do next. "Captain," Sarah said, looking back at him, "I think we've underestimated them. These ships, they're not like anything we've ever seen. Their technology is beyond ours. They've been watching us all along, maybe even longer than we realize." "Doesn't matter," Captain Walker replied. "We're not running. Humanity doesn't back down from a fight." With that, the tension reached its breaking point. The human fleet was ready for whatever was about to come. But as the Empire ship powered up its weapons, something unexpected happened. Just as it seemed the two forces would collide, the mysterious ship's lights blinked, signaling that it was preparing to engage. But then, nothing. The massive ship stopped. The eerie, cold silence returned, as if they had entered some kind of waiting game. "This is strange," Sarah said, narrowing her eyes at the screen. "The ship's not attacking. It's analyzing us." Captain Walker's mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Was this ship testing them, or was it simply waiting for them to make the first move? The human fleet held its position, weapons aimed, but with no clear understanding of the enemy's next step. "Something's not right," Walker muttered under his breath. The crew waited in tense anticipation. It felt like time was standing still, the battle poised on the edge of a knife, ready to either ignite or fizzle out. But one thing was certain: this encounter was far from over, and they had no idea what the Empire had planned for them next. The wait would be agonizing, but this was the moment that would determine if the humans were truly ready to face the Empire, one that was not just powerful, but seemingly all-knowing. And as the silence stretched on, they could only wonder, what were they really up against? The Empire's weakness. The tension in the human fleet was thick enough to slice with a knife. For what felt like an eternity, the massive Empire ship remained silent, its dark, sleek form looming just outside the range of the human fleet's weapons. Every crew member on board the human ships could feel the weight of the unknown pressing in from all sides. Were they about to face the full force of the Empire's might, or was something far more complex unfolding before their eyes? Captain Walker stared at the alien ship on the screen, his mind racing. The Empire's presence was overwhelming. But one thing kept gnawing at him. Despite its intimidating size, the ship hadn't made a move. It hadn't fired a single shot. It simply hovered in space like a predator waiting to strike. But why the delay? "Captain, the ship's energy readings are fluctuating," Sarah Wells reported, her voice cutting through the stillness. "I think they're having some sort of internal malfunction." Walker frowned. Malfunction? With a ship that advanced? "Are you sure?" "It's strange," Sarah continued. "Their weapon systems are fully charged, but they're not engaging. And their engines, there's something off. They're not as stable as they should be for a ship of that size." "Keep monitoring it," Walker ordered, a sense of doubt creeping into his mind. If the Empire's ship was malfunctioning, it was their chance, an opportunity to strike. But still, the silence persisted. The human fleet floated in the cold dark, weapons at the ready, waiting for the Empire to make the first move. It wasn't just a standoff anymore. It was a test, one that both sides seemed determined to wait out. Hours passed, and the sense of unease only deepened. The crew of the human fleet could barely look away from the screen. They were at the mercy of the Empire, and the longer they waited, the more they questioned if they had truly understood the threat they were facing. Then, at last, a transmission crackled through the communication channels. The voice was cold, emotionless, but it carried an undeniable air of superiority. "We are the Galactic Empire," the voice boomed. "You have invaded our space and defied our will. Prepare yourselves for annihilation." Captain Walker felt his stomach tighten. The time for hesitation had ended. The Empire was not merely threatening. They were about to strike. "Get ready, all ships," Walker commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos building within. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers and deploy defense shields. This is it." But as the human fleet braced for battle, something unexpected happened. The Empire ship's weapons flickered, its massive energy cannons sputtering and sputtering, failing to charge. The terrifying hum of energy weaponry that had threatened to obliterate the humans now sounded off-key, disjointed. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice filled with surprise. "They're failing. The energy cannons aren't firing. It's like their weapon systems are breaking down. The power output is dropping rapidly." Walker's brow furrowed in confusion. "Are you telling me the Empire's ship is malfunctioning in the middle of a standoff? This doesn't add up." His thoughts raced, trying to process the situation. The fleet had expected a mighty show of force, an immediate counterattack that would leave them no choice but to fight for survival. Instead, the Empire ship's once imposing arsenal was sputtering and failing under the stress of its own power. "Do we have a chance to strike now?" asked Commander Lewis, the ship's weapons officer. His voice betrayed a mixture of caution and optimism. "Not yet," Walker replied. "We need to know what we're dealing with. If their weapons are malfunctioning, it's likely their entire ship is unstable. Let's keep our distance until we have more intel." It was a rare opportunity, one the humans couldn't afford to miss. But Walker knew the risks. If the Empire ship had been able to hide its weaknesses until now, it could still have hidden dangers they hadn't accounted for. The humans had to be smart, calculating, just as the Empire had been when they first encountered it. "Sarah, any other readings on their ship? Anything else that's off?" Walker asked, his eyes glued to the screen. "Yes, sir. The ship's engines are fluctuating too. Their output is weakening. If this continues, they might not be able to move at all." "Good," Walker said, a plan starting to form in his mind. "If their engines are failing, they won't be able to pursue us or escape. We need to use this to our advantage." As the human fleet held its position, the Empire's ship remained motionless, caught in a battle that didn't seem to be winning. The once mighty Galactic Empire had just revealed its greatest vulnerability, its pride. The Empire had underestimated the humans, overestimated its own power, and now it was paying the price. It was clear now, the Empire wasn't invincible. It had weaknesses, cracks in its armor, and if the humans could exploit those weaknesses, they might just have a chance to survive. "Commander Lewis, prepare the fleet for an attack," Walker ordered, his voice filled with quiet determination. "This is our moment. We don't know how long this malfunction will last, but we can't waste it. Prepare the weapons." As the human fleet powered up its weapons, a sense of resolve washed over the crew. The Empire, once an unshakable force, was now on the edge of defeat. The humans had a chance to turn the tables, an opportunity they could never have imagined just hours ago. But even as the humans prepared to strike, the looming question remained: what had caused the Empire's technology to fail? Was it a weakness that could be exploited further, or was there a deeper force at work, something even the Empire feared? The answer was still out there, waiting in the cold expanse of space. But for now, the humans had to make their move, and they weren't going to back down. The Empire's arrogance. The hum of anticipation still filled the bridge of the human flagship. Captain Walker stood tall, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the crippled form of the Empire's massive ship looming on the view screen. Its once pristine form now appeared disheveled, a giant without its former grandeur. The hum of the human fleet's systems was steady, but there was an odd stillness in the air, as if the entire crew was waiting for something more to unfold. "We're ready, Captain," Sarah Wells announced, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "The fleet's weapons are online, and all ships are locked onto their target. But, Captain, I don't understand. Why aren't they moving? Why are they still just sitting there?" Walker turned to her, his face hardened by years of command. He had been preparing for a fight, one he was sure would come the moment the Empire's ship saw the human fleet ready to strike. But now, the Empire seemed to be waiting, as if they had no intention of actually engaging. "That's the problem," Walker muttered to himself, his eyes narrowing. "They're not just waiting. They're testing us. They're arrogant enough to believe we won't act first. They think we'll back down. They think they can scare us with their size and power." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You think they're trying to provoke us? Dare us to make a move?" "Exactly," Walker said, his voice filled with cold understanding. "They've underestimated us from the beginning. And now, they're playing a game of pride. The Empire believes it is too powerful to be challenged. It's relying on its arrogance to intimidate us. They want us to think that if we don't make the first move, we'll be spared. They believe they can break us by doing nothing." The room fell silent as the weight of the captain's words sank in. The Empire wasn't merely a military threat. It was a regime that thrived on fear and submission. And now, its confidence was working against it. Walker looked around at the faces of his crew, his officers, his family. They had fought against impossible odds before, but this was different. They had the upper hand, but it was now a matter of defiance. Could they resist the pressure to bow before the Empire's arrogance? "Prepare a broadcast," Walker commanded, his voice low and unwavering. "I want to send a message to the Empire, not just to their ship, but to their entire fleet." Sarah blinked in surprise. "You want to broadcast to them? Captain, what are you planning?" Walker's expression hardened. "I'm going to make it clear that we aren't afraid, that we are not their subjects. We're not backing down. Not to them. Not to anyone." The crew worked swiftly to set up the broadcast, their movements precise, trained. The quiet tension in the room grew as they prepared to send a signal directly to the Empire's flagship. A direct challenge, a gauntlet thrown in the face of their arrogance. The system hummed to life, and soon the human fleet was broadcasting to the entire Empire. On the screen, Captain Walker's face appeared, strong and resolute, his voice clear. "This is Captain Thomas Walker of the human fleet. We have entered your space, and we do not seek your permission to leave. Your arrogance has blinded you to our strength. We stand not as subjects, but as equals. If you wish to test us, we are ready. But know this, we will not kneel. We will not be intimidated. We will fight, and we will win." The message ended, and a silence so deep followed that it felt like the entire universe had paused to listen. There was no immediate response from the Empire, no angry retort or show of force, just the eerie silence of space. I can't believe you just did that," Sarah whispered, still processing the audacity of what Walker had just broadcasted. "Let them think what they will," Walker said, his eyes never leaving the screen. "But we've taken the first step. The Empire may be powerful, but it's no match for the will of humanity. It's time they learn that." The minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The crew waited, their breath caught, as if expecting an explosion of violence any second. But it didn't come. The Empire's ship remained still, the faint glow of its energy systems flickering and dimming. There was something else, something unsettling, about the way the Empire was behaving. It was as though they were caught off guard, not prepared for the sheer audacity of the humans' defiance. And then, as if on cue, a new transmission came through. But this time, it wasn't the booming, authoritative voice that the humans had expected. Instead, it was slow, deliberate, a voice thick with frustration. "You think you are our equals." The voice of the Empire was now unmistakable, cold, calculating, and seething with contempt. "You are nothing but an insect in the eyes of the Empire. We have crushed civilizations greater than yours in an instant, and yet you dare challenge us." Walker didn't flinch. "Your empire is built on fear and intimidation. You have no strength without it. That's your weakness. We may be small in your eyes, but we have something you will never have, true strength in our unity." There was a long, uneasy pause, and then a terrifying revelation. "We will not destroy you now, humans," the voice from the Empire growled. "We will let you live long enough to see the true power of the Empire. When you are broken, you will understand why we reign supreme. Your defiance will be your undoing." The transmission ended with a snap, and the silence returned. But this time, it wasn't the silence of waiting. It was the silence before a storm. "We've made them angry," Sarah said, almost in disbelief. "No," Captain Walker corrected her, his voice firm. "We've made them afraid." The crew looked at each other, the gravity of the situation weighing down on them. The Empire wasn't just attacking. They were reacting to something they had never encountered before. A species that didn't fear them. A species that wasn't impressed by their size, their power, or their arrogance. The stage had been set. The humans had fired the first shot, not in weapons, but in words. And the Empire had been caught off guard. They weren't prepared for a threat that fought back with conviction. And now, the humans had the upper hand. A shocking turn of events. The human fleet sat poised in the stillness of space, their weapons ready, hearts pounding with adrenaline. Captain Walker's message had been received. The Empire, once so certain of its superiority, now seemed to be wavering. The pride and arrogance that had characterized their every move were now challenged by a simple declaration of defiance. But what came next was something no one expected. For hours, nothing happened. The Empire's ship remained suspended in the void, its energy systems still flickering and unstable. The human fleet was tense but resolute, waiting for a response or an attack. But as time passed, the tension began to slowly give way to confusion. "Captain," Sarah Wells said, her voice filled with disbelief, "I'm picking up something strange. It's coming from the Empire's ship, but it's not their usual energy readings." Walker immediately straightened. "What do you mean, Wells?" "It's a signal, but it's not just any transmission," Sarah explained, her hands flying over the controls. "It's encrypted, unlike anything we've encountered before. But it's powerful. It's not just a distress call. It's more like a command." The air in the command room grew colder as the crew exchanged uneasy glances. Was the Empire about to retaliate, or was this something more insidious? "Run it through our decryptors," Walker ordered, his voice sharp. "Now." Sarah quickly transferred the signal to the ship's main systems, and a moment later, a chilling, distorted voice rang out through the speakers. It wasn't the voice of the Empire's usual commanders. It was colder, more alien, and yet, somehow, there was a terrifying familiarity to it. "To the humans who dare stand against us," the voice began, each word dripping with menace. "Your defiance is noted, but you have no idea what you're truly challenging. We are not just the Empire. We are the architects of the galaxy's order. And you will soon learn that resistance is futile. You will regret this." A long, unsettling silence followed, only broken by the crackling of static. The crew on the bridge looked at each other in shock. There was no doubt now, the Empire wasn't just a force to be reckoned with. It was something much larger, something far more deeply entrenched in the fabric of the galaxy. "What is that?" Commander Lewis asked, his voice trembling slightly. Who was that speaking? It wasn't one of their regular commanders. Sarah shook her head. It wasn't just a regular broadcast. It felt different, like a warning, but more personal. Captain Walker's mind raced. What had they just heard? Was this another layer of the Empire they hadn't even begun to understand? And why had the Empire remained silent, allowing the message to go unanswered? His instinct told him something was deeply wrong. "Keep tracking that signal," Walker ordered, pacing the bridge. "And prepare for anything. This could be the start of something far worse than we imagined." As the human fleet continued to hover in the cold, silent space, a strange new unease filled the air. The Empire was no longer just an external force to be defeated. It was an unknown entity with layers of complexity that the humans had barely begun to uncover. The more they dug, the more questions arose, and now it seemed like they were just one step away from unraveling something terrifying. Without warning, the strange signal began to grow stronger, and this time, it wasn't just coming from the Empire's flagship. The human fleet's sensors began picking up several similar signals from different points around the galaxy. They were all encrypted, all warning of the same ominous presence. "What's happening?" Sarah muttered, scanning the data. "It's spreading," Captain Walker said, his voice low and tight. "They're not just communicating with us. They're reaching out across the galaxy. We're not the only ones they've warned. And they're not just showing us their power. They're showing the entire galaxy." Sarah's eyes widened. "Are you telling me they're broadcasting their warning to other civilizations?" Walker nodded grimly. "And if we don't stop this now, we could end up with an entire galactic coalition against us." The weight of those words sank in. The Empire wasn't just a single force. It was an entrenched system that had woven itself into the very fabric of galactic power. And now that the human fleet had defied it, it wasn't just a fight against one ship. It was a fight against the Empire's vast network, a fight against the very order of the galaxy. "Captain, look at this," Sarah said urgently. "I got something. It's a fleet. Not from the Empire, but from a different sector. They're headed toward us, and fast." "How fast?" Walker demanded, gripping the edge of the command console. "They're on a direct intercept course," Sarah replied, her voice tight. "I'm not sure who they are, but they're coming in with full force, and they're not responding to any hails." "Is it another Empire fleet?" Walker asked, his eyes narrowing. "No, sir," Sarah answered. "This isn't the Empire. This fleet is completely different. They don't match any known configurations, and they're armed very heavily." A new kind of fear spread through the human fleet. This was no longer about just surviving against the Empire. It was about facing a new and unknown threat. And this new enemy was coming fast, without any warning or explanation. "They're almost here," Sarah said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "We won't have much time to prepare." Captain Walker's mind raced. They were out of options. The battle against the Empire was only the beginning, and now there was something far more dangerous approaching. The mystery of the Galactic Order, the strange encrypted warnings, and the sudden appearance of this new fleet had revealed a terrifying truth. They were not just fighting the Empire. They were fighting the very foundation of the galaxy itself. "We won't back down," Captain Walker said firmly, though his voice betrayed the gravity of the situation. "Prepare the fleet. We don't know who they are, but we'll face them head-on. Humanity doesn't hide. We fight, no matter the odds." As the human fleet braced itself for the unknown, the crew knew one thing. Whatever was coming next, it would change the galaxy forever. The final showdown. The human fleet was ready, but the air was thick with uncertainty. The strange new fleet, an enemy unlike anything they had seen before, was rapidly approaching. They had no idea who these ships were or what they wanted, but one thing was clear. This would be the battle to end all battles, and humanity was about to face its greatest test. Captain Walker paced the command bridge, eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. His mind raced through all the possible scenarios. Could this be an ally of the Empire? Or was this some new galactic force that had been waiting for the right moment to strike? There were too many unknowns, and no time to waste. "Lieutenant Wells, are we able to identify their fleet's configuration yet?" Walker asked, his voice steady but filled with tension. Sarah's hands flew over the console, her face tense. "Still no matches, Captain. Their ships are unlike anything we've cataloged. They're huge, much larger than anything we've seen from the Empire or any other known faction. And they're coming in fast, almost as if they know exactly where we are." "Distance," Walker pressed, his gaze never leaving the screen. 2 minutes until contact, sir. And they're broadcasting a message. It's encrypted, but I'm running a scan." The tension on the bridge was palpable. The human fleet was preparing for a full-scale engagement, but they had no idea if they were walking into a trap or facing a new enemy altogether. The Empire had been bad enough, but now they were dealing with something even more mysterious, more dangerous. Sarah's voice broke through the silence. "Captain, I've got the message. It's from their lead ship, and it's not like anything I've heard before. It's almost peaceful, but there's something wrong about it." "Play it," Walker said, his pulse quickening. Now, the bridge was silent as the message crackled through the speakers. The voice that emerged was calm, deep, and strangely serene, though it carried an undeniable weight. "Humans," the voice began, its tone both welcoming and threatening. "We are the architects. You stand at the edge of a choice. You have defied the Empire, and now you are being offered a chance, an opportunity to join a new order, one beyond the confines of your limited understanding. The Empire has failed. It will fall. You have the power to shape the galaxy, to become part of something far greater. This is your final warning. Do not resist. The architects are here to guide you." There was a long pause. No one on the bridge spoke. The message echoed in their minds, a disturbing mixture of authority and strange, unsettling compassion. "What the hell was that?" Commander Lewis whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. "What do they mean? Join a new order? The Empire is already collapsing, and now these guys show up claiming to be in control of everything. They're offering us something," Sarah said, her voice slow, as if considering the message carefully. "But what if this is just another trap, a way to manipulate us? We've seen how the Empire used fear to control others." Captain Walker turned to his officers, his jaw clenched in determination. "We don't know who these architects are, but they're offering us something for a reason. They think they can manipulate us just like the Empire did. But humanity has fought against oppression before, and we will fight it again." "Captain, they're getting closer. Should we prepare for battle?" Sarah asked, her hands poised above the controls. "No," Walker replied, his voice firm. "We won't make the same mistake as the Empire. We won't fight blindly. We need answers. Prepare a communications link and hail their flagship." The crew looked at him in confusion, but no one spoke out. The decision was made. Walker wasn't about to let humanity get dragged into another galactic war without understanding what was truly at stake. Moments later, the communication link was established. The large, imposing form of the Architect's flagship appeared on the view screen, its surface sleek and unmarked by any visible weaponry. The voice of the Architect came through again, softer this time, as if acknowledging their willingness to listen. "You have chosen wisely," the voice said. "Now, allow us to show you the truth. The Empire's rule is corrupt, built on lies and fear. We have created a better way, a way that ensures peace, unity, and prosperity across the galaxy." Captain Walker narrowed his eyes. "I'm listening. But understand this. Humanity will never bow to anyone. We make our own choices. If you want to offer us peace, show us what you really stand for." There was a long, unsettling silence from the Architect's side, and then the voice spoke again, this time with a slightly colder edge. "You misunderstand, Captain. You have no choice. The Empire is crumbling, and the Architects are the only force that can bring true order to this galaxy. You will either join us, or you will be swept aside." It was clear now. The Architects were not here to offer peace. They were here to take control. They had come not with offers of unity, but with a veiled threat, disguised as diplomacy. "We won't be part of your regime," Walker said, his voice unyielding. "Humanity has fought for freedom before, and will do it again." The Architect's voice turned colder, more detached. "Then you will regret your decision. You will see that resistance is nothing but futile resistance against the inevitable." Before the transmission could end, Walker cut it off. "All ships, prepare for battle. These Architects are no different from the Empire. They seek to control, to dominate. They've shown their true colors, and will show them what happens when you underestimate humanity." With those words, the human fleet turned its weapons systems on the massive, unknown ships of the Architects. They had made their choice, and now they would make their stand. Humanity had faced down an empire. Now it was time to face down something even more powerful, more manipulative. As the battle began, the human ships fired first, their weapons erupting in a blaze of fury. The Architects retaliated with chilling precision, their unknown technology striking with devastating force. The human fleet dodged and weaved, fighting with every ounce of strength they had. The odds were stacked against them, but they refused to surrender. In the cold void of space, the true war for the galaxy had begun. Humanity, once thought weak and insignificant, was now locked in the final battle for its future. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and the humans would fight with everything they had. This was the moment of reckoning. The Architects would learn what it meant to face a species that would never be controlled.